everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be showing you guys 5 different vegan recipes that are high in protein, and one of the biggest questions that I got when I first went vegan was where I got my protein, and my parents were super concerned that I wouldn't get enough protein in my diet. But hopefully this video can give you guys some inspiration if you have been worried about that kind of thing. It is definitely possible to meet all of your protein requirements on a vegan diet, and I will have all of the information for each of these recipes down in the description box. And I'll have different substitutions that you can make to either increase the protein or make the recipe healthier, that kind of thing. But yeah, I know this video is going to be super long as it is, so let's just dive right into the recipes. Alright guys, so first we're going to be making a tofu scramble. This has 45 grams of protein, and to make this we're just going to first start by rinsing and draining our beans, and don't forget to wash the can and give it a good rinse after, just so that it doesn't contaminate the rest of our recycling. So here it is, all clean, yay. So now I'm just going to chop up half of a bell pepper, and I'm also going to be chopping up some mushrooms. And this looks like a lot, but it's going to cook down a lot in the pan, so don't worry. Alright, so now I'm adding 2 cups of spinach, and spinach actually has a lot of protein. Veggies like broccoli and spinach are actually some of the most protein-dense foods that we could be eating in terms of a per calorie basis, so try to incorporate these whenever you can into your meals. And now I'm just going to turn on my pan to medium heat, and I have measured out about a teaspoon or a tablespoon of coconut oil, and I'm just going to wait for that to heat up. And I'm adding in my peppers first because they take the longest amount of time to cook, and next I'm going to be adding in my mushrooms. And these will definitely soften a lot quicker than the peppers, so they won't take too long. And I'm going to be adding just a teaspoon of salt at this step, just so that I can draw out some of the water in these veggies. This is going to give our tofu scramble a more soupy and eggy texture. Alright, so now I'm going to crumble in about half of a block of tofu, and I like to start out with bigger chunks just so that I can kind of control the size of the tofu, and when we mix around the tofu in the pan, it'll naturally just kind of get smaller and crumble. So by doing this, we can just break it up at the end if we want to. And now I'm adding in a half a cup of black beans, and this is going to add some more protein. And I'm also adding in some turmeric, which is going to give it that yellow color. Next I'm adding in some pepper and some paprika, as well as some onion powder, and also some garlic powder and some curry powder. And the curry powder you definitely don't want to omit, because this is going to give us a lot of flavor to our tofu scramble. And then finally I'm adding in some spinach, and we're just going to give that a couple of minutes to wilt, and then our tofu scramble will be done. And it is that easy, you guys, to make this tofu scramble, and it is packed with protein, and I used to make this all the time in college when I just wanted something healthy and yummy, but also super wholesome and healthy. The next recipe that we're going to be making is a quinoa porridge. So I typically eat oatmeal almost every single day, but quinoa has a little bit more protein in it, so I wanted to try making a similar kind of porridgey breakfast. Alright, so to make this quinoa porridge, we are first going to be cooking a big pot of quinoa, and I'm going to be showing you how to make the most fluffy quinoa every single time, because I have had my fair share of struggles with quinoa. So first we're just going to rinse the quinoa to get rid of some of that bitter taste that quinoa naturally has. Next I am toasting the quinoa in some oil, and it's okay if it's a little wet, it'll just take a little bit longer. And by toasting the quinoa, we're going to be giving it an amazing nutty taste, and you'll know when it's ready when it starts to look a little bit more golden and when it starts to smell a little bit more nutty. Next we're just going to be adding in our water, so we're going to add 2 parts water to 1 part quinoa, and this shouldn't take too long to boil once we have added the water, since the pan is already hot from the toasting. And you don't want to cover the quinoa at this stage, just be patient and wait for it to come to a boil. you'll notice that the quinoa starts to rise to the top when it starts boiling, and at this time you want to cover the quinoa and put it on low heat. And we're just going to set a timer for 20 minutes, and we're not going to touch the quinoa. So don't open the lid once you have put it on, and just wait for 20 minutes. And then when you take it off, it should look something like this, super fluffy and very separated. And if you look at the bottom, there will be no burning. It's going to be the most amazing pot of quinoa that you've ever made. So now to make our quinoa porridge, we're going to be putting in 2 cups of pea milk, which is a little bit more higher in protein than other plant milks. I'm using this one from Ripple. Next, I'm adding in a cup of our cooked quinoa, and I'm also going to be adding some cinnamon. Next, I'm adding a tablespoon of cocoa powder, and I'm just going to bring that milk to a boil, and we're just going to be kind of letting the water evaporate from the pea milk, and it's going to have a more creamy consistency. Once this starts happening, you can kind of stop cooking it whenever you have the desired consistency. If you like it a little bit more watery, you can just stop it here, or you can keep cooking it until it becomes more creamy. And this is what your quinoa porridge should look like once it's done. And this recipe actually makes 2 servings, so I'm just putting about half of this quinoa porridge mixture into my bowl. You can just have the recipe if you're making it for yourself. And to top the quinoa porridge, I'm just adding a tablespoon of peanut butter for some extra protein. I'm also adding half of a banana, and I'm just using the banana peel as a cutting board here to avoid cleaning more dishes. And once I have added my banana, I'm going to be adding a tablespoon of chia seeds, as well as a tablespoon of hemp seeds, which also have a little bit of protein in them. And I'm going to also be adding some pumpkin seeds, which actually have a considerable amount of protein. And I'm just adding chocolate chips here, and that's completely optional. I just really love chocolate. And I'm just also adding a tablespoon of maple syrup on top for some sweetness. And there you have it, you guys. That is your quinoa porridge, and it is filled with protein. This has 24 grams of protein, and it also has some healthy fats from all the seeds as well as the peanut butter. So this meal is going to keep you full for a long time, and it's just a great way to start off your mornings. And the next lunch recipe is a chickpea tuna sandwich. This is definitely a vegan staple because it's just super yummy and super convenient, and it's just very easy to throw together. You just kind of mix everything into a bowl, and then it just kind of comes together. Alright, so first I'm just starting out by cutting up my veggies. I'm using green onions as well as some grated carrots, and then I'm just going to rinse and drain my chickpeas and then transfer them to a bowl. Next, I'm just going to mash up my chickpeas, but you don't want to make a hummus. You do want to keep some of the texture there, but just give it a good mash while keeping some bigger pieces. And after that, I'm just going to be putting in a 1/4 cup of mayo. I'm using this one by Best Foods. Next, I'm just adding everything to a bowl and putting in my carrots and my 1 cup of onion, and then I'm just going to give everything a good mix. And then after I mix that together, I'm just going to be adding 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. And then I'm just adding in some red pepper flakes and then some black pepper. You can definitely omit the red pepper flakes, but I really like spicy stuff. And then I'm just going to give everything one final mix. I'm putting it on 2 pieces of toast, and I'm putting about 1/4 of the mixture that we made. And this has 16 grams of protein total, which isn't an insane amount, but also isn't none. So I thought I would just throw this in here because it is super easy and convenient to make. And let's go on to our next lunch recipe. Alright guys, the next lunch recipe that we're going to be making is a Mexican quinoa bowl, and this bowl has 28 grams of protein. And the first step is to just drain the water from your tofu and to try and squeeze as much water out of it as you can with a towel. Sometimes I'll put a textbook on this just for extra weight. And next I'm just cutting up my tofu. I'll be using about 1/4 of a block today. I'm just cutting up 6 little squares, and then I'm just going to try and drain the water from those squares as well. And to marinate the tofu, I'm just adding some liquid aminos, some of this chili garlic sauce. You can also use sriracha if you don't have this. That also works really well. And after putting in the little squares into my marinade, I also like to add some nutritional yeast on top, and this is just going to make our tofu a little bit more crispy when we put it onto our pan. Next, I'm just topping it off with some black pepper. This is completely optional. Okay guys, so while this is marinating, we're going to be cooking the rest of the ingredients. Alright, so to make our fajitas, I'm first chopping up a whole bell pepper, as well as an entire big onion, as well as 3 cloves of garlic. And next, to a heated oiled pan, I'm adding in my bell peppers, and I'm just going to be sauteing those first. And next, I'm adding in my entire onion, as well as my garlic. And next, I'm just adding in an entire can of black beans that have already been rinsed and drained. And now I'm just adding in an entire cup of corn. And the secret sauce for this Mexican bowl is this chipotle pepper adobo sauce. I got this one from Whole Foods, but you can also just use a can of chipotle peppers. I found this one at Safeway. And for the rest of the spices, I'm just adding in some smoked paprika, as well as some salt, and then I'm just going to give everything one final mix, and your fajitas should look something like this. Alright, so next we're just going to shallow fry the tofu in a little bit of oil. I definitely waited a little bit too long because my oil is splattering everywhere. And I'm also just putting in my marinade, but if you're doing this at home, be careful, don't heat the oil too much like I did. But we're just going to shallow fry this for 5 minutes on each side. And this is what our final tofu looks like. It is nice and crispy and browned. Alright, so now to assemble the final bowl, I'm just adding in a cup of my quinoa that we cooked earlier in the week, and I'm adding in my tofu. Then I'm just adding in a 1/2 cup of my veggie mixture, and I'm going to top it off with a little bit of avocado. Here I'm just using about 1/4 of an avocado. I'm also just going to be adding in a lemon wedge, as well as some hemp seeds for some extra protein. And there you go, folks. This is the quinoa bowl. You could put salsa on this. I usually do that, but because we want more protein today, we are going to be adding the yogurt. So we're gonna make a very simple yogurt salsa, which is essentially just yogurt and salsa. So it is very simple. Let's add the salsa first. So just taking a spoon of the salsa. Actually, let's do 2 spoons. 2 spoons of salsa. And then I'm going to be adding just a spoon of the vegan yogurt. Alright guys, that is the completed quinoa bowl, and I was honestly not a huge fan of the salsa yogurt thingy that we made, but it is just another way to add some protein if you want to. Alright friends, for the final recipe, we're going to be making this pesto pasta for dinner, and it has 31 grams of protein. Instead of using pine nuts for the pesto, we're going to be using pumpkin seeds. So pumpkin seeds are packed with protein. They're one of like the highest ranking foods. They're one of the highest ranking foods in terms of their protein content. I'm going to be using this chickpea pasta, and I will tell you guys how it tastes because I have tried like pastas with chickpeas before, as well as like red lentil pastas, and the texture was just really bad. So I'm kind of curious about this one, and I will let you guys know how it adds up. Alright, I'm starting off by chopping up 6 cloves of garlic. This is a lot of garlic, so if you're a normal person, I would use like 3 cloves, but I really love garlic. And next I'm just adding in my pumpkin seeds to the blender, and then I'm just going to blend those up first just because I want my pasta to be a little bit smoother, but you can just blend it all up together if you want it to be a little bit more gritty and grainy. And next I'm adding in the juice of an entire lemon, and this is just going to give it a nice tangy flavor. And then I'm just going to add in my greens. I'm adding about 2 cups of spinach as well as 2 cups of basil, and I'm also going to be adding 2 cups of cilantro. You can really use any kind of greens for this. And next I'm adding in about 1/4 of a cup of nutritional yeast, and this is going to just add a little bit of that cheesy parmesan-y texture to this. And finally I'm going to add in about 1/4 of a cup of oil at a time, and I'm just going to blend it up. And the oil does add a lot of calories to this, so if you want a healthier option, I would recommend just blending up an avocado in it and some water. The avocado will kind of give the same richness and creaminess, but it will just be a much healthier option. And after the pesto is almost blended up, I'm just adding in a little bit of the lemon zest, and I'm going to be adding in about 1/2 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt, and I'm also going to be adding just a pinch of black pepper. And this recipe is just really light and fresh, so I don't want to add too many spices to this. And then I'm just going to give it one final mix, and then we have our pesto. And this is definitely a more hummusy texture, so if you want to thin this out, I would just recommend adding a little bit more water. And that is our pumpkin seed pesto. So I forgot that we were putting edamame in this. If you are a functional human being, put it into your pasta in like the last 2 minutes, but yeah, I don't know, I don't usually put edamame in things. I'm just gonna microwave this. It tastes fine, yeah. Alright, so my final thoughts on this pasta. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought that it was definitely better than the other chickpea pastas that I've tried. It definitely doesn't have the same chewiness as wheat pasta, so it breaks up a little bit more easily in your mouth, but I think it definitely impressed me, and it's definitely the best chickpea pasta I've tried, and maybe I just cooked it too much, I don't know. Alright, so you're just going to coat all of the pasta in your pesto. I'm just going to feed it into this one because it looks a little bit prettier. And then I'm just going to sprinkle it with a little bit more nutritional yeast, protein. Here is the finished product. It tastes really good. The consistency of the pesto is definitely more of like a hummusy texture. So if you want like a traditional pesto pasta kind of consistency, I think a food processor might work better than a blender, but I just had a blender, so I just blended everything into like a paste. But yeah, if you guys want that like more like grainy texture, use a food processor and kind of pulse it around. So yeah, I hope you guys make this, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys.